This is low-key but still high pressure, a discussion of vector marketing's sneaky high-pressure sales tactics. My name is Matt Brennan and I'll be presenting. Let's get straight to the brass tacks. Vector marketing sales tactics. First and foremost, it will always insist on a one-on-one presentation in the buyer's home. This means one-on-one presentation means there is no other third parties involved, no friends, no extended family. It's just you and the sales rep and your spouse if you're married. The reason for this is it creates a much more personalized experience and allows the sales rep to target you individually. Now the reason it's in the buyer's home, if you ask vector marketing why it's in the buyer's home, vector marketing will simply tell you, oh, it's for the customer's convenience. However, there's a more sinister underlying reason, and that is if the person comes into your home, you have two choices. Either A, you have to confront the sales rep and tell him to leave, or B, you have to just sit through his whole presentation. You can't just get up and leave passively, because if you go in the next room, the sales rep is still sitting in your kitchen, waiting for you to come back. Now, most people dislike confrontation, so usually they just simply choose the latter. They'll just sit through the presentation because they don't want to have to force this guy out of their home. Now, befriending your buyer. This is a pretty common sales tactic across the board. Essentially, you're trying to convince the buyer that you're there for them, that you're a friend of theirs, that you have their best interest in mind. What this does for the sales rep is if the buyer thinks of them as a friend, they're more likely to listen to them. They're more likely to trust the information the sales rep gives them. But most importantly for Vector, it's harder to say no to your friends. You know, if you don't like someone, it's really easy to tell them no. If they're your friend, you start to feel guilty telling them to shove off, essentially. Controlling the presentation and the sales pace is crucial to vector marketing's high-pressure tactics. Essentially, they have this blue binder that has all the product, all the information in it, but they never let the buyers look at this binder. Well, they let them look at it, but they never let the buyer hold it or flip through this binder. The sales reps are told to keep an iron grip on it and to only show what the sales rep wants to sell at that moment. This also helps with their sense of value and a good deal. They spend at least 30 minutes telling you how wonderful this product is, and at the end of that, they pull out a competitor's product in order to create this good deal situation. People get frenzied about things that are on sale. They see that on sale sign, they're like, oh, I must buy this right now. Vector marketing creates this same feeling without actually putting the on sale sign on their product. They do this by taking, like I said, an example of their top leading competitors' prices, which are usually a little inflated, and then they tell you, our product is at least twice as good, and therefore should be at least twice the price. This produces a monumental price. And the buyer is sitting across from the dealer sweating it out. It's like, is he really going to ask me to pay that much money for this product? Then they turn around and give you a price point that is less than their competitors. Now, as the buyer isn't necessarily comparing it to the competitors, they're really comparing it to the glacial price that they were expecting out of the sales rep. This creates the feeling of, oh, this is a fantastic deal. You just told me what I should be paying, but this is what I have to pay. Oh, I can totally do that. This is a great deal. When really it's not. And even if it is, it's an interesting way that they artificially create that sensation. Now the next 2 points I like to combine is the barrier system, which Vector refers to as their step-down approach, as well as yes-no questions and working down the buyer. Now I'm going to start with the step-down approach. Essentially, vector marketing, along with controlling the presentation, starts their potential buyer off with the biggest hunk of product they sell. It's the biggest piece that they want the buyer to buy, and it's the very first thing they demonstrate to you. And after you say, it's too much, I don't really want that, they step you down to the next level, and the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And there's this whole tier that if the buyer wants to make it to the end of the presentation, they'd have to sit through all these different steps, even though each step is essentially the exact same product, usually just in smaller chunks. Now, along with these, each step are the barrier system and these yes-no questions. Whenever they set up a sales pitch, it's always a yes-no question. It's always, should I set this order for you now? Would you like to buy this right now? There's no wriggle room in a yes-no answer. You either say yes or you're forcing your buyer to tell you no. Now, repeatedly telling someone no has a very negative effect on people. There's a lot of people who simply don't like to tell you no. Also, you've already befriended your buyer. They consider you a good person. They don't really want to disappoint you. Repeatedly having to tell you no because they don't like the product or they don't want to buy it in such a huge amount literally wears down the buyer. That's what I mean by when I say working down the buyer. As you go down through these steps, and you can set up several barriers on each step. The top step has at least 4, if not 6 or 7 barriers that a good sales rep will set up on the first step. So by the time you get to the 5th or the 6th step, you've had to tell this sales rep, this good guy who's sitting in front of you smiling the whole time, no 20, 30 times. This really has a harsh psychological effect on the poor buyer. I've literally ended entire sales pitches and my potential buyer has just looked exhausted. It has physically taxed him. And this is where all of these high pressure tactics really comes to fruition. Most people, by the end of the sales pitch, will say yes just to end it. Now, vector marketing gets away with these things because they're all sort of under the surface. You see things like, oh, it's just a yes-no question. It's not that big of a deal. People don't take into account the deep psychology and the time and effort Vector has put into these marketing approaches. So they can sort of slip it under the radar and take advantage of their customers. But knowing is half the battle. If you can prep yourself for these, hopefully you can be more aware and be more prepared the next time someone comes and tries to sell you something. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas.